Already heard about Anchor. It's the easiest way to make a podcast, so I'll explain a couple of things. First of all, it's free. Second, there's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit the podcast right from your phone or computer. Third, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. Next, you'll be able to make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. And finally, it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download a free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thank you for tuning into the Wall Street Minute, your source for pertinent market news in 3 minutes or less. Today is Tuesday, December 6, 2022. Here's news moving the markets this morning. Stock futures were little changed Tuesday as traders took a breather after fears of even higher rates sparked a sell-off in the previous session. Futures tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average traded 31 points lower or 0.12%. S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100 futures were fractionally lower. The NASDAQ Composite led Monday's downward charge, dropping 1.93% for its biggest one-day drop since November 9th of this year. The S&P 500 shed 1.79%, also not to its worst day in nearly a month. The Dow, meanwhile, lost 482 points, or 1.4%. Better than expected November ISM services data, which looks at the purchasing power of manufacturers as a gauge of health for the broader economy, pressured equities on Monday. The report stoked fears that the Federal Reserve will need to hike rates for longer than anticipated to bring down inflation. The release aligns with the payrolls report late last week in pointing to a resilient economy, but those pieces added to what Dan Greenhouse called a more mixed bag of data that has given investors conflicting signals about the state of the economy. Market observers are still largely expecting a 50 basis point increase in the interest rates at the Fed's December meeting, but Greenhouse, his firm's chief strategist, said investors are conflicted on how long the central bank's interest rate hiking campaign will need to last, especially given the recent data showing the economy remains strong in some areas. Investors will look ahead to data Tuesday morning on international trade for insight into the strength of the U.S. and global economy. Later in the day, they will watch a post-bell earnings report from Smith & Wesson and Stitch Fix. Meanwhile, J.P. Morgan Chase shares rose more than 1% in pre-market after Morgan Stanley upgraded the banking giant to overweight from underweight. And that's news moving the markets this morning. Thanks for listening and happy trading.